It's day 9 of the federal election campaign, with the party leaders spread out across the country pitching their message to Canadians, including today. The parties only have 28 days left to campaign before Election Day on April 28th. So, where do the parties stand right now with Canadians? Well, Éric Grenier is here, thank God. He is the author of TheWrit.ca. He also runs the CBC Poll Tracker. And Éric is going to crunch the numbers for us. So let's look at the top line numbers. Éric, how are the main parties polling right now?
Well, we can see where the numbers stand right now in the poll tracker. It takes into account all the polls that are being published right now. We have the Liberals are leading nationally with 42% support. They're up a few points since the beginning of the campaign. The Conservatives are at 37.5%. They've been holding steady around that point for the last few days. And we have the New Democrats. They're at 9%. The Bloc Québécois is now at 5.5%, and the Greens are at 3%. So it is a big lead right now. Not a big lead, but a big number for the Liberals, 42%, and 37.5% for the Conservatives is also historically a pretty big number.
Yeah, look, normally when you see the Conservatives at 37, 38%, they're going to win, but the Liberals are just so much higher. So if an election were held today, you're projecting a majority victory. But the Conservatives, what is the precedent for a party getting north of 37% of the votes and not winning the election?
Well, the Liberals have done it not too long ago, I suppose, by different standards. In 1979, Pierre Trudeau was able to win a government, lost that election with about that amount of support. But for the Conservatives, you have to go back to 1926 to find a case where they were able to lose an election with the kind of numbers that we're seeing for the Conservatives right now. You go back to Stephen Harper in 2006, 2008, 2011, not too different from where we see the Conservatives right now today.
Okay, so there's top line numbers, seats are what count. How does this translate to seats in the House of Commons?
Well, right now we do have the Liberals who are on track for nearly 200 seats. We have them right now with 197, with a range of about 172 to 211. So that's all majority territory. 123 right now for the Conservatives, so pretty much where they were in the last election. 19 for the Bloc Québécois, so that is a big drop from where they were last time. 3 for the NDP, though it's a range of 1 to 10, and I think some of those incumbents could buck those trends a bit. Right now, 0 to 2 seats for the Greens, but 197 for the Liberals would be just a huge victory, bigger than Justin Trudeau's in 2015.
Okay, if you're going to win nearly 200 seats, they're coming from all over. I mean, where are those 197 coming from in your modeling here?
Yeah, when we're just talking about the easiest way for the Liberals to get there, you do look at the regions where they have that historical strength. But right now in Atlantic Canada, they could win between 25 and 27 seats. In Quebec, just with the numbers we've seen with the Bloc dropping, the Liberals could win 41 to 49 seats right now. And then you just look at Ontario and British Columbia. Ontario, they could win anywhere from 71 to 87 seats based on the current numbers. And in British Columbia, 21 to 25, just the kind of numbers we've seen in BC. The Liberals are leading on average in British Columbia by about 2 points. So you just put these 4 regions together, that's enough to get them to majority. Then you look at Alberta, Manitoba, that just gives them a little bit of cushion.
Okay, so look, 28 days, right? There's a lot of time. So what numbers will you be watching for in the days ahead here, Éric, to figure out where this eventually lands?
The numbers I'm watching the most are the leadership numbers, because we've seen for Mark Carney versus Pierre Poilievre, the gap between them two on who Canadians prefer to be Prime Minister, in most polls is usually bigger than the gap we see between the Liberals and the Conservatives. So if we continue to see those kinds of strong personal numbers from Mark Carney, I don't see a lot of signs that that gap between the Liberals and the Conservatives is going to get much smaller.
Okay, Éric, thanks so much. That's Éric Grenier, who runs the CBC Poll Tracker and, of course, TheWrit.ca. Rough day for the Liberals, good numbers for the Liberals. We're going to check in with the Conservative campaign now, because Leader Pierre Poilievre was in St. John, New Brunswick this morning, where he announced his plan to speed up the creation of energy projects. He then headed to Fredericton for a rally.
It is time to take back control and relaunch our economy, to unleash our energy sector and bring home our jobs and powerful paychecks. It is time to turn Canada into an economic fortress that puts our country first for a change. With Donald Trump threatening our country with tariffs, we need big projects that link our regions east to west. We need to be able to get our resources across Canada, bypassing America, so we can trade more with each other and sell our resources to the world.
To do that, Poilievre announced his government would introduce a national energy corridor. It would fast-track the approval process for pipelines, transmission lines, railways, and other critical infrastructure across the country. The CBC's Evan Dyer is following the Conservatives. Evan.
David, Pierre Poilievre chose St. John, the city described by the Canadian Chamber of Commerce as the most vulnerable to American tariffs in the country, as the venue for an announcement he said would allow Canada to reduce its dependency on American markets. He pitched a national energy corridor, a sort of a pre-approved right-of-way where companies could lay pipelines to carry Canadian oil and gas to coastal terminals like the one in St. John, with a view to getting it to markets overseas in Europe. He said this would allow Canada to lessen its dependency on American markets. The US, of course, is currently the customer for most Canadian oil and almost all Canadian gas. But he provided few details on how he would secure agreements from the provinces and First Nations along that route, something which has bedeviled pipeline proponents to the east in the past. David.
Thank you, Evan. The CBC's Evan Dyer in Fredericton. Well, with the Liberals leading in the polls, there is growing concern among Conservatives over Pierre Poilievre's campaign. He is facing some pressure to pivot and focus his messaging more on President Donald Trump. But Poilievre is resisting.
The unjustified threats by President Trump further strengthened the argument in favor of the Canada First agenda that I've been fighting for my whole life. And while we propose those solutions, we will not forget the single mom who can't afford food. We will not forget the seniors who are choosing between eating and heating. We will not forget that young 36-year-old couple whose biological clock is running out faster than they can afford to buy a home and have kids. We will not forget the families terrorized by crime and drugs. And so we will continue, despite calls to the contrary, to talk about those things, even if I am the only leader in the country that offers any change.
Okay, we're going to talk about that now with the Power Panel. We've got Lisa Raitt, Vandana Cotter, Brad Levine, and Rob Russo. Lisa, I don't know if you share the opinion of Corey Teneycke and the many unnamed Conservatives who have been speaking to journalists since he went public, but what do you make of the justification for the strategy there from Mr. Poilievre? Because their numbers are high, they're just, the Liberals are higher.
I think what Pierre and his team knows is exactly who's going to come out to vote, meaning that, you know, the number that we saw earlier from Éric, those are pretty committed and decided voters. They're the ones who are going to show up day one of advanced polls to make sure that they get their vote count. They're the ones that are showing up at these massive rallies that really we haven't seen in conservative world. They're motivated and they want to vote. Whether or not the rest of the, you know, the voting universe is going to be that motivated, I don't know. I know in Ontario, in our last provincial election, there wasn't a lot of motivation to vote. In fact, the voter turnout wasn't that particularly robust, quite frankly. We may have a different situation here where Conservatives are actually emboldened to vote. They're going to get out there and make sure, because they're hearing what Pierre has to say. They remember the fact that the last 10 years, the Liberals have been in charge, and they want to see that change, not from Justin Trudeau to Mark Carney, but from Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party to Pierre Poilievre's Conservative Party. So I think that they can continue on playing their roles that they're playing. They're executing on the plan that they have. And I would just say to the candidates out there, because I was a candidate, right? And I remember what it's like to go out and knock on doors and kind of be worried about what you're hearing on the inside. The poll that matters is the one on the day of the vote. And what really makes the difference is you finding the vote in your community and getting them to the polling station. That's all that there is to an election campaign. So keep going, keep knocking, keep walking. Find that vote and worry about the poll when at the end of the day, and worry about the infighting that may or may not be happening.
Rob, there were a torrent of stories after Corey Teneycke said what he said and did what he did. But, you know, there seems to be, when you talk to people in the war room connected with it, that they think they had a pretty good week. Their numbers are strong. It's just a bunch of things they kind of can't control that's putting the Liberals ahead of them, and they're not collapsing. What are your thoughts?
I think there's something to that.
Yeah.
Stephen Harper used to say that in Canada, about 2/3 of the people get up every morning and think about how they could support some sort of progressive cause. That means for the Conservatives to do very, very well, they have to get close to 40% of the vote. Well, they're close to 40% of the vote. What Stephen Harper's equation and calculus didn't count on was the NDP vote coming down below into single digits. And that's really what's different about
and the Bloc, too.
Yes, about this campaign. It does seem to indicate, however, that the Conservatives have a low floor, or a high floor and a low ceiling, right? There doesn't appear to be much room for growth. I do think there's something in what Lisa's saying, in that if they have the money, the muscle, the sinew, just look at the rallies, to ID their vote and maybe get it out. But will it be enough? Will the young people who are in an unprecedented manner supporting the Conservative Party over the last little while, will they turn out to vote? They traditionally don't turn out to vote in large numbers. They turned out to vote for Justin Trudeau in 2015. If they turn out to vote, that would be interesting. They don't have the senior vote right now. That's in the Liberal column. Can they move them? That was, I think, what was behind some of what Mr. Poilievre was trying to do last week with TFSAs and other things like that. That was targeted at seniors, but seniors are worried about their grandchildren and their children right now, and that's just not connecting with them. I think we'll find out this week. I think this is a pivotal week, whether or not they can break out of the or break through the ceiling that seems to be limiting them. And what's going to help them or hurt them is Donald Trump.
Well, look, the TFSA one, I heard from conservatives like that one was there was a cross-scripting there, right? Because when your whole campaign has been people have to go to food banks and they're one paycheck away from, ruin. I mean, where is the extra $5,000 for a Canadian-only TFSA?
You're trying
right?
to, this is salami politics at this point. You're trying to slice off the seniors and bring them back to you.
Yeah, but I wonder, Brad, so many of the challenges that the Conservatives face right now in those numbers are kind of beyond their control. Like the highs and lows of the NDP, it's up to Mr. Singh to fix, right? Like there's not much Pierre Poilievre can do there. What happens with the Bloc in Quebec, there's not a tremendous amount Pierre Poilievre can do there about the robustness of their campaign. I mean, they're squeezed a little bit that they need other people to do well to favor the vote, to tilt the voting efficiency and the seat count in their favor.
It's everyone else's fault, David. It's everyone else's fault.
Well, no, it's just something.
No. It's everyone else's. It's not Pierre. No. Pierre's perfect. It's everyone else that doesn't get me. None of what Lisa has explained here justifies why Pierre Poilievre can't talk about the ballot question, which your polling and Éric Grenier's polling suggests is the ballot question. It's what do you want to have done in light of the Trump tariff threats? And he almost seemed, in that clip that you played at the beginning, a little proud to say, even if I'm the only one. It's almost as if he'd rather go down than confront the ballot question. We talked about it last Monday. It's still Trump, and it's going to be more Trump this week because Wednesday is the day that the tariffs come on.
And it's not even really just tariffs; it's Trump and the whole disruption that comes with it.
We're going to have another major media cycle midweek, unless he punts it. But even if he punts it, we're still confronted with the hanging over us the threat of it. And I don't think that actually changes materially. People are going to be losing their jobs, no question. But for this election campaign, talking about none of what Lisa's talking about he's got and to Rob's point about the high ceiling, if this doesn't change for him, he's going to lose substantially, and unless he changes the tax. So he's out there at a sawmill with woodworkers who are about to lose their job, and he's talking about adding more vehicles of savings for those with an extra $5,000. Like that is, like we're talking about his inability to pivot. For certain that's a problem, and he's proudly sticking to the script because I guess he's proud if he has to go down, at least he's going down on his terms. But the notion that, he's going to not worry about Trump. Why is he worried about maybe losing some of that element? There is 10% of this country that actually like Donald Trump. What column are they under? Right now, they're under his.
About a third of his party, too.
And how afraid is he to lose those to the fringe right? So his inability to talk about the ballot question, to go for the middle, to get him over the 37.5%, is holding him back because he wants to keep on to the fringe of the right. That's the bigger challenge. Otherwise, talking about TFSAs at a sawmill that is about to shut down because of Donald Trump doesn't make any sense, no matter what day of the campaign it is.
Well, Von, I wonder about another tactical challenge that may exist for the Conservatives, because you've seen Mark Carney say since day one, negativity won't solve this, negativity won't fix this. They've clearly got research saying they don't, Canadians aren't in the mood for negativity. Yet Poilievre is the attack dog on Mark Carney the whole campaign. He doesn't have this constellation of players around him who come on shows like this one, for example, and make the case for them, right? And he has to do it all himself, so he wraps himself up in that negativity challenge.
Yeah, I think the issue is a content issue and a tone issue. And I think it's hard to unlearn that. Imagine telling Mark Miller or Don LeBlanc to be less attack doggy. That's who they are, that's the role they play. And Mr. Poilievre is similar to Justin Trudeau was, in the sense that the PM was the PM. He was the star, and we had people around him, but he was the central focus. And I think Mr. Poilievre is used to that. I don't think he wants to shift strategies. I think this has been working for him for the last year and somewhat. I think he hasn't realized that that's more because people were tired. They wanted change. They can see change now. It's still, I understand it's a Liberal Party, but it's a different leader with a different vision for the country. And I agree with Brad that the ballot box question is tariffs even on affordability, it goes back to tariffs. Because if you go...
They're the one issue now.
Yeah,
it seems,
for sure,
right?
for sure. But you can always tag it back.
Disagree.
But I think at the same time, like this is something that everyone's talking about, and I'm seeing record things. So yes, you can pull up big rallies, but Bruce Franjoy in Powellton just raised $100,000, which is unheard of in that riding for Liberals. I was talking to a friend in Julie DeBrusen's camp who says, like, random people are coming in saying, I haven't voted Liberal, but I'd like a sign because I'd like to vote this time. It's an important time for the country. Like, it's more about the country and standing up for Donald Trump. I had someone tell me that a campaign manager in Mississauga said, someone emailed him saying, I've been conservative 64 years, but listen, this time I got to vote because of Donald Trump. It's coming from all sorts of places. Does it matter that affordability is still there? Yes, it is, but Mr. Carney is putting out policy on affordability like housing.
Right.
So I think that's one of the core things.
Yeah, like Lisa, I know they're not completely the same issue, but they're intersecting more and more as they feed off each other because tariffs would exacerbate affordability. But even the National Post was suggesting this weekend that Poilievre is losing his edge on that issue in some of the data they have. What your quick thoughts on this?
Sure. I think you guys are defining the ballot box question more on a wish than you are on the facts. And if you take a look at some of the polling that is out there now, you'll see if you're over 50, yeah, sure, the ballot box question is tariffs and Donald Trump. If you're under 30, if you're under 35, it is not. It is not their big concern. It's housing and it's affordability. It's not so much about Donald Trump. There is a big difference. To Rob's point, it's going to be a challenge to get that sector of the demography to come out and vote. But it's happened in the past and it may happen again.
No, that's a very good point on the generational divide. There's geographical challenges and there's generational challenges. Well, let's face it, if there's a trade war, all of it's going to get worse quick.
To the young people, I will just say, like, a lot of them are worried about Trump's negativity and his issue with wokeism and lack of thoughts on climate change. That does help get people out to vote. So if you they may have cared about the affordability message, they also care about other things. And if he sounds Trumpian, it's not going to work for them.
Yeah.